Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 42, and we are going to be chatting about snowshoes. Seems very fitting for this time of year, don't you think, Ben?
Oh yeah, we almost even have snow now.
Yeah, almost. Well, we did have some snow there for a little while, and then it turned almost 20 degrees and rained. I mean, what's with that?
Yeah, we had snow this morning. We got a little bit out there, not much, but it's coming. I hope. I love a bit of snow. I'd like to see it come and stick around. Honestly, that's my biggest complaint with snow. Is either I want it or I want it gone. It's this show up and thaw. Never been able to enjoy it is the worst. But I'm sure many of our viewers get a ton of snow, and some of them maybe don't get any snow. Those who do will like this episode.
Well, at the very least, being in Canada, you are going to know what snow is. Some of our listeners from around the globe may not appreciate this so much, but at least it'll be an interesting topic nonetheless.
Yeah. So we have a few different designs we want to talk about. But do you want to talk about how it relates to bushcraft first, I guess, a little bit?
Yeah, why not? So I guess the my 2 cents on it is it's just a better way of getting around the woods when there's snow. And you and I talked about it a little bit just before we started up here. The whole idea of snowshoes, it just spreads out your weight so you don't sink into the snow, thus making it a little easier to walk around. So the quick and dirty off it, from my point of view, that's kind of how it ties in. What about yourself?
Well, exactly. I mean, once the snow starts to build up, once it gets over a few inches, it can make it extremely difficult to get through the woods. Your feet start to sink down. You're dragging out. I watched a couple of crows this morning. We went out today, and I watched some crows walking through a pile of snow, and it was funny as hell to watch because the poor guy was up to his belly, and you'd see every waddle walk, and it's just what we look like trying to go through the woods, right? You got to lift your feet right up. It's exhausting, it's tiring, and it does beat you down. So snowshoes allow you to kind of stay on top of the snow, walk so much easier, and the snow really does make access to areas that you wouldn't get to sometimes in the summer. It allows you to go across bogs and rivers and even ponds when they're frozen. In the winter, it'd be much more difficult actually in the summer. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but the winter in this part of the world actually opens up areas that are close to you otherwise. So yeah, it's a bit of a necessity. I think snowshoes have been around for an awfully long time. And I'm more than positive that the natives in North America used them for years. But I'm pretty sure that they existed in other parts of the world too. So it's not a new concept, but there's always new designs, new ways of doing it coming out. And yeah, you've got a few designs I think that you want to talk about. I'll let you
Yeah,
go first.
so everybody watching there, if you are watching the live stream here, we do have Josh joining us. So just saying hey to him. But behind me here, I do got three basic designs that I have on hand. Ben, you told me this one here, right behind my head, is kind of the Canadian military.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's a Canadian military design. They're either magnesium or aluminum. I'm not 100% sure. They're extremely lightweight. It's an I-frame design to the outer part. It's a bit like an I-frame, is it not?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
If you can,
And it's wove through with almost like clothesline material, a plastic coated steel wire.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the harness for it in that case almost looks like it might be rubber tubing.
It's not quite tubing, but it's something very similar. There's another system that came with it too, which is kind of what I yanked for these ones. It was a strap system.
Yeah, so I've used the straps over the years. I've had ones with buckles. I've had one with Velcro. They all have, I guess, their advantages and disadvantages. I've reached a point where I have the ones I have, and I think I'm hoping to talk about those last. You may push me to do it earlier,
Nope, that's fine.
but yeah, we're going to have quite a few designs, and some are good, some are great, some are actually quite difficult.
Yeah.
The thing to keep in mind is if you're snowshoeing, chances are the temperature is at or below zero. So you're probably trying to install this with gloves on fairly big, heavy boots. So your design should be pretty simple. If you're looking for a new pair, think about these things. You're not. It's not like in the summer trying to strap on a nice pair of sandals where you can. Your foot has to be able to go in. It has to be fairly secure, and you're going to have to be able to move and maneuver that snowshoe around when you're walking. So the harness design is probably as important, really, as the rest. It all adds up to a final
And for
good
sure.
product.
And like you said, this one's kind of rubber. These two back here have similar ones. And the ones I made down on the bottom, which I held up there, they have another type of strap system. So something I'd just like to touch on when we are talking about this Canadian military one, and I'll come back here a little bit, is the some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks of each of the designs. If that makes
Yeah.
kind of sense for you, Ben. So this design back here, the white ones, it was based, and you probably know a little bit more about these than I did because I didn't even know they were Canadian military. But it's very traditional based, rounder front, sloped up at the front, so that when you pick your foot up, it'll kind of drag and set back on the snow, spreads your weight out. It's made out of the cord, as you can see there, or the cable, sorry, which allows snow, water, and stuff like that to drop down through it so your feet don't bind up with snow and things like that. Now, one of the major
Yeah.
drawbacks I find with this, and you seen it when I picked it up, there's that long tail that goes off there. I'm not sure what the idea is behind the tail in the design, other than maybe it's the extra material going out the back and adds a little bit of stability for when you're leaning back. But that long tail gets hooked up into everything, and if you're gonna walk backwards, it's pretty much impossible. You are better off just turning around, and honestly, that takes like a Walmart parking lot to do it. They
Yeah.
need a lot of room to turn.
Yeah. So it copies what I believe is and I'm not sure which Native American group's design, but originally when I've seen them, it was a spruce webbing covered with like a rawhide material, and that's what I grew up with. My parents had a set. I think we all used them, and they worked really well. I'm not knocking them in the least.
Oh no, it's
Um,
still a good set of snowshoes. Just
the
it has this.
tail for those was to hold the shape. Like when you made it, there was a couple of bolts or bindings around the end, and it held it all together. I think it's a holdover from that. It had a few advantages. You could stick those ends in the snow and stand them up. Um,
And more often than not, that's exactly what I use them for, or to hang stuff off.
yeah, and when you're walking, I guess it sticks up enough that it kind of does keep the front up without dropping too much. It does have some uses to it. Uh, but the design is, in a little ways, I think, antiquated, but very functional, works great, and worked for hundreds of years in that very shape. So you can't knock it. I mean,
No.
trappers and hunters used that design, like I said, for hundreds of years, and were very successful with it. It is a tried and proven method.
Well, as you said,
Um,
Canadian military. You know what I mean? Lots of people still use this design. You can still buy this design made out of wood. I've seen that around too. That one,
yeah,
like I said, was metal. Not a bad design, or sorry, not a bad snowshoe. Just
no,
there's been improvements on it, and that's kind of how I laid these out here. Was the progression of how I well, actually, this one and this one should be switched. But in any case, kind of the progression of what I enjoyed. So
yeah,
after this set here, you kind of end up with what I call the Canadian Tire Specials or the Big Box Mart Specials, which is probably the most common ones out right now. I see these in schools and everything else for exploratories and outings and stuff like that. And honestly, it's the same kind of idea. They just didn't take that long tail out there. So a little shorter, of course. You can actually see this one all in frame at once. They added some cleating to the bottom, which helps you dig in a little bit to the snow, a little bit of ice and stuff like that. But the major drawback to these, which is something that we talked about once again before we came on, is where it's solid. These tend to pack a lot of snow on them. So if you're walking along, if it's light, fluffy snow on top of maybe wetter snow, it's not so bad. But if it's any kind of wet snow, that snow will eventually start collecting on top of this. And I think you said you basically have to kick it off. And that's exactly it. You kind of do the old lag or the cat lag twitch. If you ever seen a cat get its foot wet where they're kind of shaking it, that's exactly what you end up doing with these things. They still work great. The benefit is they're ultra light, like they're made out of aluminum and some sort of plastic, and they're affordable. I think, like I said, these were 50, $60 maybe.
Yeah, that's where they start. Depending on the name brand and the location you buy it, I've seen them go upwards of $200.
Yeah, but all still kind of this design.
Yes, the basic general design, usually aluminum tubing with some kind of more or less solid webbing across it, and they may or may not have the ice cleats. The ice cleats I do like in when you are on icy surface. When you're not on icy surface, I don't see it as being an overly big advantage.
They suck if you got to cross like a road or something. It's like walking on skates all over again. It is just terrible. But if you are on something slippery, they dig in, they do their purpose.
Yeah. So it has a purpose for sure. They are pretty good. They're probably the easiest to find. If you're looking for snowshoes and you go into the store, those are the ones you're going to find. I'm not going to knock them as being a poor design. They're just not my favorite design. And a big drawback, I agree with you, is solid material. When material lands on top of it, it pretty well just drops down through or sticks to it. It won't drop down through like a webbing material. And that is kind of the drawback. I don't really have a lot more to say about it.
Well, I have one more drawback to this design. I understand why they did it, but for somebody like myself who's a little larger, it's kind of a drawback. As you can notice, between the two, significantly narrower, which is so you don't walk so bow-legged. Because some people with shorter legs, me included, with this design here, you tend to kind of walk with this bow-legged. You're kind of like whipping out past your other foot. So they shrunk it in a little bit to alleviate that problem. But when they did that, they narrowed it in, and you actually sink into the snow a fair bit with these green design ones here. They, probably an extra 2 or 3 inches deeper than this one over here, easily. And for me, that's kind of one of the reasons I got turned off on it. It was my first purchase. It was a good set, and it was just something to get me out there, honestly. And then I acquired these white ones here. But last and not least, might as well just keep chugging along there, is this design over here, which is now my go-to ones. And it's kind of a cross between these two, and it's got some really good things. But now that I've seen yours, I've noticed some things that I would change about this. Once again, not knocking these. I still love them. They are not quite as wide as the white ones, but they are wider than the green ones, but they're shorter than the green ones. And I don't know what the real name of these are called, but when I bought them, it was from a forestry company, and they were called ice skimmers, and they were marketed for more like literally being on like hard, crusty snow and ice. If you were walking a woodlot and you had to cross a swamp or something like that. So I do like these ones. They do have a lot more throughway where snow and stuff can fall, but it still does clump a little on the front. Now, the front lip of that doesn't rise up quite as much as the other ones, and I actually prefer that, because I find if it lifts up too much, it kind of gives you this false step. You see it arching up, and it's really hard to break the habit of short-stepping yourself, and you end up kind of doing this weird, funky dance down the snow. But what I do like about these is they made them wider again, but not so wide that you're walking bow-legged. And they still have a little better design, or another design, maybe not better. I prefer these little pegs over the cleats on these. I find these aren't as bad when I'm like if I head to cross a road or something like that. I'm a little bit more balanced, mainly because instead of it all being up front on the ball of your foot, like the other design, they actually put some at the back, and it kind of balances you out. But yeah, I really like these ones. The other thing that I would say that I'm not so fond of is the amount of straps. But once you get them set up, they are just kind of quick buckles. So you can just reach down, buckle them up, you're good. As long as you get them set up to your boot beforehand. Now, if I was to hand these to Ben and be like, oh yeah, here you go, man. Have a set of snowshoes. Let's go for a walk. You would hate me, because that is like a 15-minute setup when it's all said and done. by the time you get it all, like the front flexes and you get it mashed into your boot, it's just annoying. It takes a while. But once you do, what do we just slip your foot in, clip it, and you're gone. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
give take relationship on that one. But I mean, I'm picking out those negatives only because you showed me yours.
Yeah. So, I guess the next is the last but not least. This is my youngest daughter's set. I chose this mainly because it fits on the screen really nice for those who are watching, not those who are listening. But these are, if you want to look them up, a lot of people call them like the Newfoundland snowshoe. I think I've heard them called bear paws before. But it's a wire mesh, so it's an outside wire crimped at the very back, and then it's a nylon twine, marine grade twine woven through. So they allow for snow and water and stuff to pass clean through them, but they're tight enough web that they really capture the snow. The harness system traditionally put on these is an inner tube out of a car tire, cut in a triangular shape, reinforced in the front two corners, and just strapped down across a center cross brace that your toe actually falls down into. So all you do to get these on is you put your toe into the hole, you grab the tail and pull it around the back of your feet. Your foot goes in automatically in the right spot. That's it. It takes seconds, and you're off. There is a slight kick up, very slight kick up to the toe. Rest of it's nice and flat. I have, and you can imagine that I am not the best runner in the world. Growing up, they used to do snowshoe races and stuff, and people would have the new style, the old traditional style, and a few of us had these. These generally won the race. These will actually even allow you to walk backwards fairly decently, and they are relatively lightweight and really fun to play with. Sometimes, like if it's not all perfectly set up, you may just need to redo the lacing just to get your toe right where you want it. But yeah, they work really well. I say this, my mother bought all these. I've bought all these for us last year. It's a set for everyone in my family. And she found them in Grand Falls, Newfoundland. But I know there's a guy in Corner Brook. He sells them. I also have here, I'm going to show these because I'm kind of... This is a set my father made. My father used to make these too. He taught me, and I have built them. It is a pretty bomb-proof design. And the ones my father made do not have the front kick up, but never had a problem with them. These have miles and miles of use on them, and are the rubber's starting to fail after many, many years of use. So that's my take on the snowshoe, my favorite.
Now, something I liked about the design you had there, Ben, I'm interjecting my 2 cents there, is like you said, the ability to walk backwards, because it takes all the benefits of this white design back here from the military, tried and true traditional, and they just get rid of the tail. Which it serves no purpose, in all honesty, other than sticking them in the snow so they don't bury in. And after you said that, I do remember reading that somewhere. It was for kind of like jamming them in, so if you went to sleep, you woke up, you could still find your snowshoes, I guess. Yeah. And maybe that was just...
I think there was a fringe benefit to an existing design. And maybe. I think when the military commissioned to have those style built, they chose a design that was proven to work and tried to improve it with very lightweight, modern materials and very rugged materials. Like those frames and those things are virtually bulletproof. Shy of driving over it with a truck, I don't think you're going to damage it. And if it's sitting flat, you're still not damaging it. That wire cable on it, that's probably rated for a few £1,000s. You could walk on that all your life and not wear them out.
No, like not this one that's behind me, but the sister to this, which is still out in the garage. I've run that over with my truck by accident. Still works fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's a very strong, rugged design, lightweight, works well. Can't really knock it. Biggest problem I have is the tail does kind of dig in when you're walking backwards. If you try to walk backwards with these even too fast, it will eventually dig in. You do have to be careful. but it allows you to turn around in the spot a lot easier and do some small backtracking.
Well, even
Really
if
good for
nope, sorry, go ahead.
really good for like when you're rabbit hunting. You got your snare set. Usually, you walk 2, 3 steps off the trail to where you set your snare, and then you have to get back out. That's what I really like those for.
Well, the number one thing I see is without the tail is you can do that turning because these ones do take a Walmart parking lot mainly because you still got to allow for that long buggery tail behind you not to get wrapped up in trees, which I have
Yeah,
done trying to turn. And if you've
yeah,
ever tried to like turn around with skis on and you get tied up in a knot and fall over, it's even worse with a snowshoe because they're wider. A little
yeah.
bit better because you're not clipped into them, but you still kind of are with the harness. Like you can still get yourself pretty buggered up with a snowshoe.
But I mean, the advantage or the reality is, it is some of the best time to be in the woods. It's great for hunting. It's great to just get out. I don't know about you, but the day after a good snowstorm, you go in the woods and all the snow's on the trees. It is gorgeous, and to be the first one out there and all that fresh powder and just walk through it, and you can see that no one's been through it since the snowfall. You can see every track. It's gorgeous, and this gives you that ability to do it. So, are you laughing at me or something?
No, no. One of our listeners there, somebody in my fire department, Troy, just sent me a picture of how he's watching us, and I'm gonna see if I can get it up here really quick without buggering everything up. So just give me 1 second, because it's just kind of impressive. I mean, to me, I'm a small-minded individual and I'm very easily amused. So let's go with that, I guess, first and foremost. But it just goes to show, there's people out there that watch us and appreciate it and things like that, and it's always good. Now, something I was going to ask you about snowshoeing, because it's kind of a personal preference, but even when it's hiking, how do you feel about poles? I know a couple of people I go snowshoeing with, like they are religious on their poles. They will take 2 trekking poles with the snow spreaders on them, and that is how they ski, like cross country ski, they snowshoe, they swear by poles. Now myself, I'm not so big on them unless it's really tricky snow and I'm doing a lot of plunging through, and then I just typically make one while I'm out there.
I generally do not have. I very rarely ever used purchased poles. I used ski poles when I was skiing, cross country style, occasionally, but for snowshoeing, no. Like yourself, though, if I get to a spot where I felt I needed one, I usually just cut a small evergreen or alder, or not evergreen, an alder or aspen, and made my pole out of that. Usually they're pretty straight and strong, and don't take much to cut at all. Um,
Yeah,
the disadvantage with that, of course, is you don't have the basket, so it's going to sink in. But the reality is, even with a trekking pole with, say, a 3-inch basket, if you put all your weight on it, it's still going to the bottom. It's not going to support you all that much. It gives you a little bit of extra stability.
I would
If you need
argue
it,
the stability is, yeah, maybe a little bit. I don't know. To me, it seems to get in the way just as much as the tail end. You know what I mean?
I tend to agree with you. But the reality is, some people are more stable on their feet than others. You're kind of short and built close to the ground. I think you've got some pretty good stability
I'm
going
ball
there, right?
shaped. You can't tip over a ball.
uh, I I grew up playing on rivers and stuff. We spent half our summers running across the river on the stones. I find that I'm fairly short-footed. I'm clumsy in other ways. Don't get me wrong. I'm by no means the most graceful person in the woods you've seen me, but I can get through most places pretty good, and I don't mind bumping into the odd tree and maybe knocking it out of its roots. But
Now
I'm
you're
pretty good
saying
at
that,
control.
but I'm remembering our last camping trip. I was the one that fell in and out of the boat twice. You got in, no problem. When I tried to get in that kayak, that had to be the funniest thing ever. But I digress.
Sure, I got a bit more practice with the kayaks than you guys. But yeah, being stable on your feet is a fairly important thing. If you don't have that initial stability for whatever reason, sometimes that little stick, that ability to go out and put it's only a few ounces of pressure sometimes that makes all the difference in the world. So if you find it helps, do it. Like I'm
Oh,
not
I'm not
knocking it.
knocking it at all. I don't get
I
it.
like having my hands free for other things. And walking through the woods more often than not, I'm using my hands to push things out of the way and stuff. And sometimes a stick does come in handy, and that's why I get a walking stick. I often have a walking stick when I'm in the woods. But like I said, I generally cut it as I need it, and then I can discard it if I don't. It's not something that I have to rely on. It's not something I have to drag when I don't need it. It's nice to have that ability to take it and leave it as you need it. Um, I think that's a strong part of bushcrafting, actually, to be able to make the thing you need when you need it, and then it's not as big a deal to discard it. If you get one that you really love, I've taken some home, I keep them,
Oh yeah,
but many of them
I still got the one I took from our camping trip. It's drying in the rafters out there.
and there's a whole bunch on my cabin you've seen laying around. So uh, yeah, but that's the beauty of this whole thing we're doing here is, you're getting out and enjoying nature and using it as you need to. And I don't think you're harming anything by taking the odd tree, especially, half the time they're dead. We picked up a bunch off the beaver dams.
Yeah, we found them out in the beaver dams, and as you're saying, most times if you take a small tree that's under other foliage, it's just going to die anyway. It's competing for the nutrients and stuff in the soil. The higher foliage is going to block out that sun. It's just getting that initial taproot growth, and then it's basically like anybody that's been out in the woods, go to a softwood stand, you'll see all kinds of spindly ones this big that get up maybe 15 feet and then die.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's
Uh,
basically it.
and with an alder and aspen, they're root propagating trees. You cut one down, three more grow up. Almost, you come back a few weeks later, you can already see there's 3 or 4 feet of growth there. It's ridiculous. So honestly, I really feel it's harmless. Uh, it's also where I tend to get extra tent pegs when I need them, things like that. So yeah, that's your snowshoes. What goes well with snowshoes that we maybe will talk about shortly, I guess, would be maybe some kind of sled to pull behind you.
I don't have one myself, but I do like the topic. One last
Ah,
thing I want to say on the snowshoes before we finish up the topic there is the good thing about snowshoes, as you can see with all the 3 behind me, there's tons of designs and stuff, but you don't actually have to run out and buy it as like a good set of snowshoes. You probably will once you get into it, but snowshoes are one of those things you can actually make a set fairly easy. Now, they're
yes.
not going to last a long time. They may only be the one beater around the woods, but they're not a hard thing to make. You kind of started on it at the start of it, and I didn't know if we were going to go down that path or not. But literally, it's if you bend the tree around, and that's where you get the long tail, and you bind that, and you put a cross member in so your foot takes the weight and it goes up, and then you can take some spruce boughs and other things and cross that over and make yourself a
Yeah.
basic foot binding, you have made a snowshoe. It will get you out of the woods. Like I have done this in the past where I've gone into the woods, usually in the spring. You might get a few inches out and around the roads and stuff like that. And then as you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the woods, you're noticing those few inches turn into a foot, which turns into maybe 2 feet. And the next thing you know, there's patches where you're almost up to your weight and you look like the crow. And you can fight through that stuff for hours, or you can take like literally 20, 40 minutes and hammer together a basic set of snowshoes. They're not going to win any awards. They're not going to be pretty, but they are functional. And maybe after this goes up on YouTube and whatnot, I'll try and post a link below to how to make a basic snowshoe or something like that. But that's one of the things I love about snowshoes is they are versatile, but they're fairly simplistic. Now you can get into some very intricate designs like Ben's snowshoes there, and those things will last forever. You said there's tons of kilometers on those ones that your old man made.
Yeah.
And the only real wear they have on them is the rubber, which is probably just age catching up to that. You know what I mean?
And honestly, the rubber is not essential. As that breaks down, other than replacing the foot harness, which is not hard. I mean, find a decent go down to any hardware store and pick up an inner tube, cut it open, and then just you're cutting a triangle and a triangle inside. It's
And you can
not a
follow the
hard
old
design.
pattern that's on there. I mean, if you're really stuck for an idea. And the other thing is, you can make a set at home. Like that's what this set was here. I was telling Ben when I first before we came on, I made this set. I did not design this set. Let's be very clear of that. This is not my design. It's very similar to the one you see over here. Somebody else made one of these, and I looked at it and I'm like, hey, that's pretty easy. I'm going to try making one of those. So with a pipe bender and some baler twine, basically, and some other stuff, and fishnet. That's all that is there, is a herring net. And I made myself a basic pair of snowshoes. And the idea of these were they were going to be in my backpack for when I was in the woods and I ran into this 3 feet of snow. I'd have these on the backpack. Reality was, it was a good idea. Didn't pan out. They kind of sit in my garage now. I still end up making them on the fly when need be. Once again, they're not pretty, but they work.
Uh, Cheap and quick. I've seen this done. I think they used to call them pot lids. Is just a round piece of wood. Maybe a foot and a half or so in diameter, and you just drill a couple of holes, take some lacing, tie it around your foot. Goes down through the two holes, comes up, cross over the front of your foot and around the back of your heel, come around the front and tie it. You can pretty well. Random question. We just got a message.
Did we?
And yeah.
On our page? Well, I don't see it, so I'll let you read it.
So random question, you guys. Episode 15, you return. Talk about. Hold on now. You guys are all going to disappear.
Oh, I actually found the message here. But seeing you got to it first, you be my guest. What I am going to throw up right now is the viewer photo of the week, so why not? So this is Troy, as I was saying. He's watching us from what looks like his living room all ready for Christmas. So just a huge thank you for coming and joining us, Troy. It's always good. Thanks for coming back and, at least indulging us a little bit. So did you get to that message there, Ben?
Yeah, so he's saying, random question, episode 15. You returned, you talked about your phone was 85% when you turned it off. When you woke up, it was 24%. You figured you must have accidentally left it on. And my question is where did you put your phone because of how cold you said the nights got if you were not in your sleeping bag or with you somewhere else warm? The cold will drain your batteries. So that's from Matthew Ellis. And he's got a good point. Cold weather can affect some batteries quite a lot.
What was it that time? That was only like 5 degrees, was it? Or no, we figured it might have got to 0 at night because of the humidity and stuff in there rolling off the waterfall. I assume that's the one he's talking about.
Yeah, it would have came awfully close. I think, actually, I know, I generally sleep with my phone in the sleeping bag with me, so it wouldn't have gotten that cold, but it's either in the sleeping bag with me or just outside, so one side of it could have been fairly cold. And yes, that could have had an effect. Since I've upgraded my phone since and haven't really tested this one in similar situations, and I don't know if it was my phone that dropped the most or yours.
No, it was definitely mine, and I'm trying to remember where mine was. I think the first night I left it in my backpack, and literally just because, my backpack was hanging on the tree. If you guys can remember back to that picture, right where it was the head or foot. I think it was the head. Anyway, it was one of the trees that my hammock was tied to, and I put it up on a toggle, and I think I shoved it in the front. Second night, it was between me and the underquilt is where it ended up. It was supposed to be in the hammock with me, but somehow it ended up getting between the hammock and the underquilt. But even at that, lithium-ion batteries, I think, have an operating temperature. They're into the negatives, and it shouldn't affect them that kind of drop, but maybe so. Also, my phone's old. Ben and I have been talking about this, and it's the running gag. I think my phone's like 7 or 8 years old now, and it ultimately, I think that's the problem. What's going on there is it's just an old phone. It's an HTC One M7 or 9. I can't remember. Mel has one of them. I have the other one, and I can't remember which is which because they basically look identical. Yeah, not a problem there, Matthew. At least you're catching up.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah. No, and it's a great point, especially talking about winter stuff. We are getting into the cold, and my brother's up in Fort Mac. and I've been talking to him, and he actually said uh, he's noticed it more with the iPhones. Not that he has one, but his buddies does. And at certain temperature, a lot of phones will actually just shut down. And him and his buddies were out skiing, and he said like he's got the Bluetooth things in, and they're listening to music when they're skiing. And he said all of a sudden, all his buddies just took their phones out, they turned them off, they put them in their pockets, and they stopped using them. And he said, "Well, what's going on?" They're like, "Oh, it's too cold now. They died." And he looked and he said, "Well, mine's still working. I don't get it." But uh, honestly, all of them have that problem at a certain point. Some of them earlier than others. Is at a certain point they do start to function a lot less. The batteries will drain a lot quicker, and you do have to keep them warm. Keeping them inside of your clothing will help that, but
And I
everything
often
has
wonder
its.
if there's maybe a thermal controller in there that regulates that a little bit too, because I know that even if once it's been cold and it drops down, I turned it off, threw it in my inside pocket while I was running around. When I fired it back on, it was back up in charge. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, for sure, it's a protection thing.
science.
Uh, they all have a limit, right? And trying to run them at lower than their normal limits, they're worried about different things that could go wrong, I'm sure. And Fort Mac hits -40, -50 somewhat regularly in the winter. So these are the extreme ends of where humans operate well.
Well, humans generate thermal heat from the inside out. Cell phones,
Yeah.
typically, the only heat they generate is resisting heat. So as power goes through, it creates a resistance that gives off the heat. But in the turn of that, by giving off the heat, they're generate, and it kind of goes into a downward spiral, and they burn themselves out.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we got snowshoes covered. We've talked a bit about phones. Christmas is just around the corner. Next episode is Christmas Day.
It is. It
Kind
is.
of a,
If you're looking for last minute gift ideas for the person in the house that may want to hit the woods, there are snowshoe options available to you. Not that these are bad, but you may want to look at the kind Ben has. Because you said you've seen somebody $50 selling those right now.
yeah, I'm no affiliation with this man whatsoever. I have no idea what his product's like, but they look identical to these. He was selling them on Kijiji or Facebook. It was on Facebook yard sale. $50 a pair, he was asking. I don't know that you can beat that. Honestly, go to Canadian Tire, buy one of theirs if that's what you prefer.
These ones
But
right here, I think, were $50. These ones here
yeah.
were over $100, and I bought these from that antique place for probably $50, $60 too.
So I personally, I would go with this style. That's me. Um, but yeah, no, great piece of equipment. Definitely something to add to your kit if you want to get out there, especially hunting. Maybe getting some ice fishing in, or some of the hot tinning that seems to be fairly popular right now. I know me and you are talking about doing some stuff with that. Jeremy over on his channel, he's doing quite a bit with that. I know Gary, our other buddy, he's been doing quite a bit with that. Maybe after Christmas, me and you will do a trip in a hot tent.
It's definitely in the planning. We're trying to figure it out, but I have
We
a
got
weekend booked.
surprises coming. We haven't finished our second stove yet, but we have one working stove, so that's awesome. And we have access to some stuff. And I really want to start playing with some tarp designs. So that you'll probably see coming up shortly. So lots of cool stuff on the go.
Definitely some things to look forward to. Some definite future topics going to be rolling out that hopefully will peg some people's interest. And once again, if you guys have any ideas that you want to know about or would like us to chat about, drop us a line. You can get us on any of our social medias. Get us on YouTube. Get us on email. Get us on the website. Basically throw a rock and there's a way to get a hold of us.
And if you know something really, really well and you want to come on and talk about it, contact us. We may be able to work that in. Or just throw it our way and see how badly we mess it up.
Oh, for sure. Because first and foremost, we are not experts on any of these subjects. We are a couple of guys that are just rambling on about our experiences. There's been topics where Ben has been great, and I've had to do research. And there's been topics where I have been a little stronger, and Ben's had to do some research. And that's just how this thing goes. We'll pick a topic. If we know a little bit, great. If we don't, well, we're going to learn a little bit. And we're not afraid to, or at least I don't think we're afraid to. Maybe it'll be some
Oh,
really
definitely.
weird topics out there and we'll shy away from them, but I think we're game for anything. As long as
Yeah,
it's PG
absolutely.
13.
I'll take that challenge. Wow. Yeah, if you want anything above that, you're gonna have to. We're gonna have to get a different channel for that. Sorry.
And there might be one in the works. We have talked about the digital campfire. Not name dropping anything more than that, but that is something else you guys may hear in the future.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And that concept is definitely in the works, and that's a bit more than just me and you. So keep an eye out for it. If it becomes a real thing, we will definitely talk more about that. Um, so those are. I think we've covered everything we need to talk about today. We can definitely drag on for hours and hours.
Oh, we are good at that, but I think we should probably wrap it up just for the sake of listeners.
Yeah. So tune in next week if you guys are bored. I know Christmas is here. You'll probably have absolutely nothing to do in the evening, and you'll have nothing new to do. So we will be here to fill your time. If you want to listen to us, we will talk about Christmas. Really, I guess will be more that sort of thing. I guess maybe we'll talk a little bit what we got, what we're doing. I think it'll be a bit of a chat more than a set
Yeah,
topic.
I imagine Christmas Day is probably going to be one of our quicker podcasts. And just a chit chat, just to keep up with the 1 week releases, because we did make a promise that we were going to do one every single week regardless. And I mean, that's going to be episode 43. We're almost at the 1 year mark, Ben.
Yes, there's definitely going to have to be some kind of celebration for the 1 year mark. I haven't figured out what it's going to be yet. Maybe you have, but
We'll
we're doing
see.
something. But yeah, let's wrap her up. Get out there, enjoy it, have fun. There's plenty of ways to enjoy the woods out there, and share it with us. Send us some pictures. Send us some stories. However you would like, we'd love to hear from you. And have yourselves an awesome night and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry
I can say
Christmas to everybody. Yeah, I'm saying it. Politically correct or not, Merry Christmas. And yeah, as Ben said, reach out to us on any of our mediums that are listed here below the video. Those for you that are listening to us, you can find us on Facebook. Just search Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures and you'll hit our Facebook page. If you're Twitter oriented, it is ABA_Bushcraft, and that's kind of Ben's thing over there. He is the Twitter god. If you are on Instagram, search Atlantic Bushcraft, and you will end up with my shamble of an attempt at doing some social media on my own. Or you can hit us up on our webpage, atlanticbushcraft.ca. It'll link to all our major medias, as well as our Spotify, our iTunes, Google Play Music, and a few other things. Or, if you're old-fashioned, hit us up on good old-fashioned email. podcast@atlanticbushcraft.ca. Both Ben and I will get it, and we'll put our heads together and make sure we don't sound like complete morons when we try to answer you. Or we will, and we'll laugh about it. Either way, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and you mentioned Facebook. We both respond to that pretty well, equally well. It may just be a mystery of which one you're actually talking to.
And you know what? That's part of the fun. If you can figure it out, good on you. If you can't, it's probably because we don't know either. Because I have actually gone back through and read some of our old comments and been like, I don't know if that was me or Ben. But anyway, everybody, have yourself a good night.
Night.